So number one, and this is a very new kind of question where you're given already, it's like they're telling you what they're going to do to any two numbers whenever they're written this way. So they already told you that if you have x comma y, you should multiply the x. Also, first put the x to the power of 2 and then multiply it by 3 and subtract that by 4 multiplied by the y. So whatever two numbers that you actually add here, instead of the x and the y, you should do the exact same operation to them, and that's all. It's similar away to the idea of f of x and so on. So the answer for this one should be 3 times 9, 27, 27 minus 4 times 2 minus 8. 27, what? Okay. That's 27 minus 8, 19. So if we substituted 3 and then 3 here again, power 2 minus 4, and instead of the y, I'll put the 2. That should give me 19, and the answer will be C. And I think this one was one of the easy ones. Now, when we look for number 2 as well, it was one of those easy ones as well. There is a rule specifically about this angle, which is called an exterior angle. And that rule of the exterior angles mainly states that any exterior angle is equal to the sum of the two non-adjacent interior angles. What does that mean? It means leave the one right next to it, but take the other two interiors added to each other. So 35 plus 95 should give you the answer, which should be 130, which is H. Is there any problems in this one? No. Now, if of course you did it the longer way, it would just take extra time and you'll have to do 180 minus 35 and then minus 95, which will give you 50. So then put this one with 50 and then again do 180 minus 50, which is a very long process that doesn't make any sense. So please try to remember the rule of the exterior angle right away.
I made the longer one.
I thought so, that's why I'm telling you. It's a very common, well-known mistake, that's all. Because people forget about that rule entirely. So any triangle in the world, if you extended any of its lines, like this way, this exterior angle is equal to these two added to each other. So this x is equals to a plus b, just to make things faster. If we move to number 3 now, this is a very basic simplification question. So what you just need to subtract, to divide like terms. So the 36 and the 4 are like terms, which means they can be divided and it's equals to 9. X to the power of 4 and x to the power of 1, we subtract the powers. So it becomes x to the power of 3, which is 4 minus 1. Now for the y, this is y to the power of 3 and this is y to the power of 1. So 3 minus 1 will become y to the power of 2. And this negative sign should go down as it is. It has nothing to do with the whole operation. So that makes E the correct answer. Since we've already discussed now some of the basic things about the powers, which is mainly whenever we're dividing two things with the same power, we subtract the powers. We also, in the multiplication, should know that we actually add the powers. And we should also know that if we have a power over another power, these should be multiplied. And I should also know that if I have anything to the power of a negative power, if I needed to change the sign of the power, I'll take the base with its power and change its location to the denominator. Or if it was already in the denominator, I should take it up to the numerator. That would change the sign of the power. So if I had x to the power of negative b and I wanted to make it x to the power of positive b, I should move the x with its power down. Finally, and the most important one of them all, is whenever I have x to the power of a fraction. Whenever the power itself is a fraction, I should switch that power so that it becomes x to the power of the numerator under the b root, under the denominator's root. What does that mean? So let's say, for example, if you have x to the power of 2 over 3, that will change to become x to the power of 2 under the cubic root. The number that's down goes outside of the root as its index. Does that make sense, everyone?
Yes.
Okay, Malish, I'm sorry. I know this may have been things you already know and you've already heard about for sure, but it's a good reminder anyway because they do focus on these within specifically the ACT test more than any other one. Now, if we move to number 4, it says here at a certain airline company, the cost to transfer mileage points from one person's account to another person's account is $0.75 for every 100 mileage points transferred, plus a one-time $20 processing fee. What is the cost to transfer 7,000 mileage points from one account to another at the airline company? First of all, this is definitely a linear function, and I'd like you to be very attentive to the fact that there is a linear function here. And the reason why I know this is a linear function is, first of all, because there was something to be paid for every whatsoever. So this is a keyword for the slope. And also because I found something that's paid only one time, and that is a keyword for the y-intercept. So whenever I saw keywords that represents slope and another keyword that represents the y-intercept, I realized this must be a linear function. Now, if the 0.75 happens for every 100 mileage, that means that for 7,000 mileage, I'll divide the 7,000 by 100 to get 70. So I'm supposed to multiply the 0.75 only 70 times. So that means I'm supposed to multiply the 70 by the $0.75 and add to that the $20 fee that was paid at the very beginning. That should get you the overall amount, which I believe is 67.5. Is that right?
72.5.
Okay. Honestly, it's a calculator thing, so just try it out.
Yes.
Any problems here?
No, Mr.
Awesome. Right. Moving on finally to number 5. This was the last question in the first form. So you're just given the value of x and we're basically substituting. That's a calculator question and it's done in a second. Once you substitute, that should become 100 minus plus 55. So it's 155, which is E. If we look for number 6, it says Tahu earns his regular pay of $11 per hour for up to 40 hours of work. So only for the first 40 hours, he'd take $11 per hour. But then for each hour over the 40, Tahu earns 1.5 times his regular pay. So whatever the regular pay that he takes, we'll multiply that by 1.5 and multiply that only by the number of hours that he works extra or over the normal 40 hours. So if he worked a total of 50 hours, these 50 hours should be split into 2 in order to calculate his salary or his pay, So the first 40 hours I calculated it in a specific way, but then the remaining, which are 10 hours, are calculated separately. The 40 hours are supposed to be multiplied by $11 each hour. But then for the for the 10 hours, the 10 should be multiplied by 1.5 his regular pay of 100. So this is how we're supposed to calculate the first one, and then the second one, and then add both of those pays together to get his overall pay for that week. Does that make sense to everyone, or is there any problem so far?
No, Mr.
Awesome. So now 440 and then 10 times this one is 110. 1.5 is 55, 165. So that's a total of 500, 600, and 5, which is G. Now, if you can tell, I've been, if you noticed so far since the very beginning, I'm a person who does not really write because I'm explaining to you. It's not because we're in an online class and that's the reason why I write things down and highlight them and put boxes. I put those boxes and highlight things because it's the only way I organize my thoughts. It's the only way I keep my mind focused. And that's probably the only way you should do to keep it doing the same. Specifically because in a matter of in the full amount of the test, which is a complete hour, for example, for this one, and then another hour for each subject and so on, your mind would not be performing at its peak, just like when you're sitting at home and chilling and on your own device and in AC on your bed. What you're doing now, or how you're thinking now, you're thinking شوية at ease, and your mind as well is at ease, so it's easily linking and remembering all rules and so on. But when we're in actual test, the pressure of just being in a test, plus of course the pressure of time, and that you're not as comfortable, of course, as being in your own house, things get a bit harder, and you need to assist your mind to keep it on track by actually doing those tiny kinds of changes, like just drawing arrows that represent that this 50 hours is actually split into two different things. This is something that's extremely important, even though it seems to be tiny and minute and doesn't really change how we think, but it does. It keeps your mind knowing for a fact that we're not done if we just calculated part of it and the other part not. You need to remember that there are two parts together, and so on. So please, 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 always take notes and highlight things, and whatever you see as important, write it down on the side. If you remember the rule, even if you're not sure how you're going to use it in this question, just write the rule in front of you. Your mind can easily remember and understand what to do next if it sees the things in front of it rather than just thinking about it. I hope that can kind of make sense. And I want you to know that this is not just wasting time, and those kinds of advice are actually فعلا what matters, not just the math part at all. Okay. Now,
Thank you, Mr. We understood.
I love it. Thank you, Amina. Number 7. It says here a science class has 8 juniors, 4 seniors. The teacher will randomly select 2 students, one at a time, to represent the class in a committee at the school. Given that the first student selected is a junior, so we've already selected one and he's already a junior, what is the probability that the second student selected will be a senior? First of all, whenever I see the word probability, I'll just write the rule, which is 1/3 over total. That's the rule I know for probability, percentages, and fractions. So 1/3 is mainly what we want here is the probability that the second student is a senior. So how many seniors are there? That's the 1/3. Apparently, I do have 4 seniors overall. Now think about the total. The total should be the seniors and the juniors all together. But they told me already that they've selected one of those students, the first student, and he was already a junior. So now I'm no longer selecting out of 8 juniors, I'm just picking out of 7. One of them is already playing outside, or one of them is already representing the school in a committee. So instead of 8 plus 4, I should actually have now 7 plus 4. That would get me 4 over 11, and that's your probability for the second one to become a senior. So that's a very common question in the ACT. Very common one. So I've seen it more than once in different tests, in different, of course, contexts. But at the end of the day, the idea of it is you've already changed. It's like the second selection. So the first selection has changed the values. It's no longer the same total, or sometimes no longer the same wanted as well. So if the first student was a junior, and then they're asking me what's the probability of selecting the second student as a junior as well again, then the wanted would have been 7 instead of 8, because the juniors has decreased over the total, which is still 7 plus 4. So it would become 7 over 11 if that's the case. Interesting. And that's it for number 7. Now let's work on number 8. says when Tyron fell asleep one night, the temperature was 24 Fahrenheit, and then when he awoke the next morning, the temperature was negative 12 Fahrenheit. Letting the positive sign denote a rise in temperature and the negative sign denote a drop in the temperature. What was the change in temperature from the time he fell asleep until the time he actually awoke? So the change in temperature, that's what they're trying to figure out apparently. When I feel I'm a bit confused in reading any kind of those long word problems شوية, I try to look first of all for, of course, highlighting anything I understood or anything that's important. That's the first thing. The second thing, before I even reach this level, I should have already read each sentence separately and made sure I understand everything I needed out of it. And finally, if you're that stuck, ask yourself, like, what's his actual question? What do they want? So look for the end of the question where it says what, or what is, or which is, or like a question maybe. So it says here, what was the change? So I know that I'm looking for the change in temperature. So I think, what was the change in temperature? It started at 24 apparently, but then when he went up the next day, it went to negative 12. So how can it go from 24 to negative 12? Just subtract them. That would get me the change. Good. Now, 24 minus 12 would become 36. My question is, from the time he slept till the time he awoke, did the temperature actually drop or increase? It dropped. It was at the beginning a positive temperature and then it was a negative temperature. So it's not an increase of 36, it's a decrease of 36. And that's why the answer here is F, but not K. Does that make sense, everyone?
Yes.
Perfect. Moving on to number 9. The total cost of renting a car is $35 for each day. The car is rented plus, I read it in a very stupid way. And that's فعلا a very bad mistake. So first of all, I shouldn't stop unless there is a full stop, and that's a mistake that I did. So I have to read it entirely once together. The total cost of renting a car is $35 for each day the car is rented, plus 42.5 for each mile the car is driven. That's where I should stop. So it seems to be a very long sentence, so I'll go back to this sentence again. I won't read the rest of the question for now. I'll just reread the whole sentence to get something that's important. Apparently, 35 goes for each day, and then that's $1. But then the 42.5 are cents, and that goes each mile. Now, what is the total cost for renting the car for 6 days and driving 350 miles? So for the days, I understand that 35 should be multiplied by the number of days, which is the 6. Add to that the 42.5 cents. Now, I'll first need to change the 42.5 cents to dollars so that I don't have that confusion of some of them are dollars and the others are cents. So how can I change the 42.5 cents to dollars? I'll just divide this by 100. So 42.5 cents, I'll divide it by 100. The decimal will move this point, so it will become actually 0.425. Multiply that by the number of miles, which are 350, and put this on a calculator. That's how we get the total number, the total cost of renting a car, 6 days, and driving it 350 miles. I'm just calculating that on a calculator, so give me a second, Raj. So it's a total of $358.75, which gives me the answer as C. So the trick in this question is just the fact that we need to change from cents to dollars. Other than that, I don't think there is a trick because they explained exactly what each amount should be paid for. One goes for the days, yes, and the other one goes for the months. Finally, number 10. What is the slope of the line? So we just need, whenever we're given points, the slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So that is negative 1 over 7. So the answer in this case is H. And that's it. Any questions?
No, Mr.
Now let's try 3 and 4 together. They do have probabilities, they do have inequalities, equivalence, percentages, common denominators. So a total of another 10 questions. P3 and P4. And let's hope we can do them within time. I'll give you 12 minutes for those right away. 12 minutes started now. One morning at a coffee shop, each customer ordered either decaf or regular coffee, and each ordered either with milk or without milk. The number of customers who ordered each type of coffee is given below. A customer will randomly be selected from all 36 customers. So apparently they have a total of 36 customers, and which is already proven here or shown here in the table. What is the probability? So wanted over total. Apparently the wanted in this case is the probability that the selected customer will have ordered a regular coffee without milk. So regular without, here's the regular, without milk. So we're talking about those 10. So that's the wanted. Over the total, because I'm selecting from all my customers. So all together, a total of 36. 10 over 36. When it's simplified, it's 5 over 18 because we need to simplify it, of course. So B is the correct answer. Any problem there?
No.
Moving on to number 12. Which of the following inequalities best describes the solution set? So when I'm solving an inequality, it's exactly like an equation where I'm going to move the like terms together, the x's with each other, and the numbers on the other side. So the 2x will go to the other side by subtraction, and the negative 5 will go to the other side as addition. 3x minus 2x is just an x, and then less than 1 plus 5, which is a 6. So x is supposed to be less than 6. However, in any other case, when I divide by a negative number, this symbol must be flipped. So for example, if I do have negative 3x less than 9, in this case, when I divide by the negative 3, it will become 9 divided by negative 3, and I'll flip this sign this way. So x is supposed to be bigger than negative 3. That's a very important note, and we sometimes forget it.
Okay, Mr.
Which of the following expressions is equivalent to this? All what we need to do is to distribute this term on a bracket. That's what we do whenever we see a number multiplied by a bracket or any brackets multiplied by each other. So we distribute, and that would get me to this. Now 4x and 6x is a total of 10x, and 8 minus 3 is a positive 5. When you look at the choices, this is not there as it is, but instead there's this choice B, where when you spread or distribute, the 5, it will get you to the same answer of 10x plus 5. So B must be the correct answer. If you don't mind, just give me 1 second. I have to get this phone. I'm really sorry.
Sure.
Hello? So moving on to number 14. What is 4% of 1.86 multiplied by 10 to the power of 4? I would strongly recommend that you do this one on a calculator right away as it is. So the 4% of, if you do it on a calculator, it should get you the answer right away, which should be, let me check it. 4%. 544. Now the other option, is for you to just calculate. I'm sorry. Is for you just to calculate the 4% out of the 1.36 and then multiply that by 10 to the power of 4. So sometimes the calculator would not be able to input, for example, something that it has 10 to the power of 100, for example. Now, the only thing that you need to know is that if you calculated 4% of the 1.36 and then multiply that by 10 to the power of 4 is exactly the same as multiplying the 1.36 times 10 to the power of 4 and then multiplied by 4%. So what we're trying to say mainly is if you do have a percentage, which is 4%, you multiply it by the value that you need to figure it out from. So when you look at it, you mainly you're multiplying these three things by each other. Now, which order would that happen? That's your choice. You can multiply any of those by each other and then multiply by the third one. So the 4% could be written as 0.04, and you can still multiply this 4% first by the 10 to the power of 4, then whatever comes out multiplied by 1.36, still okay. But of course, the calculator is the fastest, shortest way to do so. So the 544 is definitely the correct answer. Now 15, which is weird, and it's a very common mistake. They say what's the least common denominator for those fractions? So they already have denominators there, which are the 35, the 77, and the 22. So I need something that I can divide, or I need a number that I can divide by all three numbers. So I need one of those to be divisible by 35 and divisible by 77 and divisible by 22. Do that, of course, and I don't think any would be possible except for the 77. So trying that on a calculator, 770, sorry, should work. Yeah, this is the least one. Let me check if the 110 would work. Of course not, of course, because 110 is not divisible by 77. So just, خلاص, B is definitely the correct one. When you're trying them out, if only one of them didn't work, there's no point of trying the rest. So you'll find that you're actually doing this faster than you expect, yani, and you'll be able to figure out the answer faster than you expect. This point is labeled on the graph, and you're given the function of it itself, which is x to the power of 3. The graph of f of x will be translated 3 units to the left. So I'll move it 3 units left. Which of the following points will be on the image of the graph after the translation? When I translate an image, I mainly move it, just move it as it is. So if I'm moving left and right, I'm moving along the x-axis. So I should be adding or subtracting to the x-axis, to the x values, or to the x-coordinate. But if I'm moving up and down, I should be moving along the y-axis. So I should add or subtract just to the y. These represent the translations. As long as I'm adding or subtracting, it's definitely a translation. And if I'm adding to the y, it's up and down. If I'm adding or subtracting to the x, it's left and right. Since they said they're going to move this translated 3 units to the left, it means they'll decrease by 3. So whatever the x value that we have for each point of this graph should be decreased by 3. The 3 should be deducted or subtracted from it another 3, which means that the x-coordinate should be a 0. While the y-coordinate should not change at all because I did not move up and down, I just moved right and left. So the actual new image or the new point should be 0 on the x and 27 on the y, a point somewhere here. So F definitely is the correct answer. Does this concept in general make sense? So we can apply it on any other form? Right. One thing though that I have to mention, if we're talking about the reflection, if I needed to reflect a function, for example, if I have this function of x to the power of 3 and I wanted to give it a reflection across the x-axis, then I should multiply the entire function by a negative sign. This will be across x-axis. While if I wanted to reflect it across the y-axis, I should multiply the x itself only by a negative, and the power will remain outside, which in this case will result into the same shape because this is an odd power function. If it was an even power function, then it would have changed entirely if I reflected across the y-axis. But because, again, it's an odd function, the reflection across the x and the reflection across the y would somehow, sometimes may result into the same exact shape of the graph. Does that make sense, Shoaib? Or not so much?
So if we wanna reflect on x-axis,
We actually
we're gonna
multiply the
multiply
y.
with
Yes, which we're going to multiply the whole function
whole function with the power 3.
with its power and everything. So what's the function? What's the f of x? It's x to the power of 3. So I'll multiply the x with its power, everything. I'll multiply it by a negative. Just to give you a better understanding of it, I actually will give you for example, if this is the function, f of x is equals to x squared plus 3. So if I needed to reflect across y-axis, I actually should multiply only the x by a negative sign. So it should become negative x in a bracket to the power of 2 plus 3. While if I needed to reflect across the x-axis, I should multiply the y, which means I should multiply the entire function. So the negative will be outside and then the entire function inside. So the negative, when it's distributed, will get me to a new weird function that says negative x squared minus 3. This is the new one reflected across the x-axis, while this one, the reflection across its x-axis will keep it as it is. Does that make sense?
Yes,
I love that it actually may make sense.
I understand.
Thank you. In this question, you're given you're given 2 points and you want to find the midpoint between them. And I've told you earlier that the midpoint of anything in the world, I should just add them and divide them by 2. But since these are coordinate points, which means they have x and y's, I'm supposed to add the x's and divide them by 2, and then add the y's and divide them by 2. So to get the midpoint, I should add the negative 6 to the 2, which is this x-axis, sorry, x coordinate with this x coordinate over 2. And then I should take the y coordinates, which is this 5 and this 9, added to each other to the power, sorry, divided by 2. This should give me the x and that should give me the y. So negative 6 plus 2 is negative 3 over 2. I did something wrong? No. Add them and divide them by 2. Oh, I'm sorry. Negative 4 over 2 is negative 2. Okay. And this one is 9 plus 5, which is 14 over 2, which is 7. So negative 2 and 7 is the only one. Of course, also, I should have noticed that the negative 2 only applies for one of the choices. So I should have picked this one right away without even calculating the y. I should have. But unfortunately, I forgot. 18, whenever we have a fraction and we need to find the value of x, this should definitely go to the other side by multiplication, which will give me x squared plus 2x, but then now is equals to 2x plus 4, which is 2 times x and 2 times 2. Now, whenever we have x squared and x power 1 in one equation, we move everything to one side and make it equals to 0. So x squared plus 2x minus 2x and minus 4 equals to 0. These will cross each other because positive 2x and negative 2x are the same thing. So the remaining is x squared minus 4 equals to 0. Because now I just have x squared, no x to the power of 1s. I can move the negative 4 to this side and I'll have x squared equals to 4. In order to remove the power of 2, I'll square root the other side. So the square root of 4 will give me x equals to 2. Here's the thing. Someone would say, isn't the square root of a number supposed to give me positive or negative? That's true, but the negative 2 would not work here. Because if you substituted here negative 2, this would become a 0. which means this whole thing will give me math error. So the -2 is not correct no matter what, while the +2 is the only one that could work. Does that make sense as well? Mehmet,
Yes.
Mehmet as well. Are you good, ya Habibi? I haven't heard anything. Like, are you
Yes, yes, yes.
all good?
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome.
Can you hear me, Mr.?
Please go ahead. Yes,
My internet was that I was checking this. I have a question.
of course.
In the left side, can we simplify the upper side with the x parenthesis? So x parenthesis x plus 2 and simplify the x plus 2 with each other.
You definitely can.
And x squared, no, x equals to x.
Yes.
So it will be.
You definitely can. They both are perfectly just fine. You definitely can. The reason why I did this thing, which is bardo stupid of me, it's a long way, it's a longer way. The only reason why I did this is because I wanted to make sure that even if those numbers were somehow different and they're not divisible by each other, or if I couldn't take a common factor, it would work. But I should have noticed what you just noticed. So that's a mistake on my side. But then again, يعني, that's what I'm telling you.
It's okay.
No, that's what I mean. I do that, and I tried to show you that from day one. Is that I do mistakes, and I don't mind doing that. I'm still learning, and I'm still applying, and I know every time when I'm even explaining it that I may suddenly discover something new. So it's okay as long as I think in a good mathematical reasoning, and if I was able to later on do what you did and recognize a pattern, that's a skill that I would love, and I'm trying to learn. And of course I did earlier, and I learned already. But I mean, if I was doing the test, I would have noticed that if I wasn't explaining it, I would. Something like that. Anyway, I appreciate it. I wanted Bardu to show you a couple of things, or to discuss with you a couple of things. Is I've had my days, and you've been with me in my days, and you've seen those days where I easily get mistakes, like truth mistakes within the test. And that's still okay. And I always don't mind doing that. And that's wallahi 100% true. I don't even get like embarrassed or think about it or get مثلا stressed, because I believe that's what you guys should see. This is how a human being works. Sometimes we perform at our best, and other times we don't. And it's not something that should at any point demotivate you or make you think that you're not مثلا good, or that you're not doing your best at the time. You did do your best at the time. It's just that your mental status or your brain at the time was not at its best performance, and that's okay because you don't have control over it. So that's fine. Anyway, yalla, let's go with this one. This one is pretty interesting because those kinds of questions are there a lot where there are too many information, and sometimes we require parts of them, and sometimes parts are not used at all. So it's important, or the skill that they're looking for through those questions is, are you able to identify which of the given information matter and which does not? And do you have to, or do you easily get lost in all of that, or you can easily look up what you want specifically? So just by looking at this, I can tell by the headers that this is an age group, and those are the number of people in that age group. And I've noticed a big number here, so apparently this is a total of 5,000 adults. And also when I went over here, I realized that these are categories of moviegoers. So some people go very often, and then sometimes, and then rarely, and those are the number of those people. So just by reading the headers, I understood, I think, everything they've already tried to explain in words. The only new part is that this $9.5 is for all regular showings and $7 for the matinees. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know what is that. Matinees. I think it's. I honestly don't know what does that word mean.
We can change it like.
It doesn't matter, right?
Whereas Yes, it doesn't matter, but it's okay.
So based on the survey results, what was the average number of moviegoers for each of the four categories? Just get the average of the number of moviegoers for the four categories, and we get the average by sum over number. So we're just going to add all of those plus each other on a calculator over, they're already a total of how much?
Total 5,000.
No,
This one.
because we want to get for the categories, the average of each category. So it's like we're adding up all the numbers of all the categories and splitting them among the categories equally. Does that kind of make sense? So we're splitting
Yes.
not among the number of people, but we're splitting among the categories. So we're dividing by 4, which are a total of the categories available. So that would get me, what's the answer?
1,250.
Now, if we move to 20, suppose all adults surveyed happen to attend one movie. The total amount spent on tickets by those surveyed in that week was 44,000. How many adults attended matinees that week? Still, they're talking the matinees thing. Okay, $7 for the matinees. So apparently that's the thing, and then 9.5 for regular showing. Okay. So I'll just add first of all the number of tickets sold altogether. What's this? Oh no, okay.
May I try to solve it?
Oh please, I'm lagging at the time. Please go ahead.
So we have total of X and Y with the manatees and regular ones.
5,000?
Yes.
And then
And 9.5 for the adults, X, yes. And 7 for the manatees is $44,000.
And then mode 5.3, or are you going to solve with substitution or elimination?
Yeah. I just multiplied upper side with the 9.5 to eliminate regular ones. And then it's 2.5y. 2.5y equals, I forget.
No, that's fine. That's fine. You can just do it on mode. I know how it's. Yeah, I understand. So just do it on mode 5.1 and get it over with. Come on.
It's G.
So definitely correct, which is 1,400. And also, I want to say something regarding this. Okay, of course, I wouldn't recommend you doing anything except using the calculator. Huh?
I didn't know what 5.1 is doing. Learn it right now. Yes. So
okay, that's okay. Here's the thing: if you click on your calculators on mode, it should get you all the options available. The one that says EQN is the equation.
Yes, I used mode 5.3 and
exactly.
4,
so
I didn't use the one.
Yeah, mode 5.3 is the one that has AX squared. You'll find one that says AX plus AY or BY equals C, I think. That's the system of equations one. So it works just fine.
It's nice to learn.
Yeah, and because you have your calculators with you in the test, abuse it. Seriously, abuse it. Type. Is there any questions about this one? Like we've built the system of equations based on the number of adults, the number of tickets, or the number of people overall, and then we've based the other equation on the total amount of money by multiplying the price of each ticket by the number of tickets, and then the price of each matinee or whatsoever by the number of the matinees, which was Y, and that's how we got the system. Peter, you did not yet solve 21, right? Or was it included? It was included. One of the following circle graph represents the proportions by age group of the adults surveyed. Which one? So the adults surveyed, the age groups. These are the age groups. So let me take it there just to look at it. Okay. So anyway, apparently the highest goes for the 21 to 30. So I should look for the one that has 21 to 30 as the majority. This has 21 to 30, almost 50%. So D is definitely not the right one. When you look at B, 21 to 50 is 45%, definitely not the right one. This one just doesn't make any sense. Now, let's check the other two. Both of them have 21 to 30 bigger than the others, but then you just need to compare the others. You don't even need to get the percentages, to be honest. So when you compare it, apparently 51 to 40 is the lowest percentage, sorry, and that's the case in only A. C has these two similar to each other, which are supposed to be these two. Since they're not similar, then definitely is the right answer. Does that make sense, everyone?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. I have honestly to end this because of the other class as well. I would please ask you to solve the homework, and please also ask you for the next class right away, which is Saturday. Before I do that, do you all have like actual questions that you have